These are the things that we believe in. First, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. Second, that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. Number three, that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable among us. And number four, that it is inappropriate to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generations. They came from you. They're your pillars. Hello and welcome to the National Leadership Briefing. My name is Doug Sharp and I will be your host for today. Well, as promised, today we are dedicating our entire hour together to review the issue of human exploitation, sexual exploitation, prostitution, and the harms that can come to vulnerable young women and girls in our country if these things are not paid attention to. We have dedicated this hour because, as you know, we look through the lens of the four pillars at all of the issues that are facing us. We want to look specifically at the third pillar lens today, which of course is the third pillar being that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable that live among us in our communities. So it is very important for us today, we feel, to begin the conversation and draw specific attention to this issue of sexual exploitation, human trafficking, and prostitution in our nation, and make sure that we are taking advantage of every opportunity we have to protect vulnerable citizens and defend against every threat that may be on the horizon to place them at further risk. So first, this is how we're going to get started today. Of course, we've got lots on our schedule as always, but we're going to be starting out with reviewing a midweek touch point segment that we had earlier this month, which identifies our strategy of looking on the horizon for these opportunities and threats and why it is that the times we spend together like this are so important. So let's start there and then we'll get right into the schedule for today. Talk to you soon. Now, one thing that we found on the National Leadership Briefing is that things are moving awful fast all the time. We get together on the first Friday of every month. We always only meet for 1 hour, and then we have these midweek touch points during the week, throughout the week between the briefings. That's not a lot of time to get together. So we want to make sure we use the time to the best advantage. And sometimes we have to move fairly quickly. So when you introduce somebody brand new to the National Leadership Briefing and introduce them to the idea of coming together on a regular basis and rallying around these principles, then they are joining something or coming on board something that is moving quite quickly. So we've got to my first suggestion is to slow it down a bit when you introduce it to them and bring it to them in increments, like introduce the idea first of the four pillars, for example. Start with the story, tell them a little bit about the four pillars and what they're all about. Tell them there's a group that gets together on a monthly basis and ask them if they'd like to join the next call. Now, when you get them on the next call, let them know before they come on the National Leadership Briefing, let them know that things move fast and that you don't want that to in any way scare them or startle them, but things move fast because there's an awful lot going on. But the third thing I want to point out to you, which is a really, really important tip, is this arch that's over my head that says horizon right behind me, right? So here in the National Leadership Briefing, no matter what point it is that you join the briefing, that becomes your now, your present circumstance. That is when you are seeing the National Leadership Briefing for the first time. Well, what I'm going to suggest you do is when you do that is make sure you point out to the people that even though you're starting right now, we want you to think that off into the future, there's going to be an opportunity that we can capitalize on together to speak with a unified voice, or there might be something that is threatening to the things that we believe in, like parental authority, or maybe there's more debt being piled on the backs of our children. But we want you to immediately tell people that no matter when they come on the National Leadership Briefing, that we are scanning the horizon always, looking for those opportunities and threats. And then what we're doing is we're using the road ahead of us to prepare ourselves to capitalize on that opportunity or defend against that threat. This is why we get together on monthly increments, is because bit by bit each month, we're preparing for that moment in time that we can see on the horizon when we need to speak and act in a unified way. Okay, so now we are refreshed in our understanding of the need for us to scan the horizon and look for those opportunities and threats ahead of us, and to prepare ourselves on the immediate road ahead here on the National Leadership Briefing to address and respond to those opportunities and threats with the maximum influence we can possibly yield as a group of people coming together using our combined voice to speak to the things that are most important to us, like protecting the vulnerable that live among us in our communities. Well, let's get started today. We have a jam-packed schedule today. As you know, this is what we're going to be sharing with you today. First, we have a clip. We wanted to share a stakeholder commentary, one that we have shared before, but we wanted to give vulnerable citizens from vulnerable communities of Canada a voice here. And so we have a member of the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia that shared some very, very poignant words about the vulnerability of their community to things like the decriminalization or legalization of prostitution. Then we are going to be hearing from a sex exploitation trainer and educator, someone who is prolific in their work here in Canada, someone who you've seen before, but it's just my absolute pleasure to introduce again. We're also doing a citizen spotlight segment today and going to be sharing the work of a municipal government leader who has done something absolutely outstanding that we are going to be able to duplicate across the nation in our own municipalities. We also want to give survivors a voice today, so we're going to be sharing a clip of someone you will be meeting on the road ahead. I guarantee you, I'm very impressed with this person and the work that they're doing, and I wanted to share their story with you today in the Citizen Spotlight segment. We have a member of Parliament joining us today with a parliamentary update, and then we also have a strategist, someone who is going to share some news, some exciting news about the road ahead on dealing and addressing head on this issue of sex exploitation, human trafficking, and prostitution here in Canada. And I want you all, as you're going through the briefing today, as you're listening and hearing from these people, and of course looking forward to the post-briefing notes where they're going to be sharing all of this information for future reference for you, I want you to know and keep in mind that this is the beginning of our conversation on this issue. We will not stop. We will not relent. This is something that must be addressed here in Canada, and we are absolutely committed to working with you on this, raising the level of understanding on these issues, and making the best, the most impact we can again on the road ahead, and helping to preserve and protect vulnerable citizens that live among us in our communities. So let's get started now. First, let's hear from member of the Legislative Assembly, Ellis Ross, who had a few words to say about an experience he just had recently, not too long ago, I should say, in the legislature when a group of advocates for legalizing prostitution met with him at the legislature. Let's hear from Ellis.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, I tried to look into the social issues that young girls were facing because I was coaching a junior girls basketball team at the time, and I could see the issues they were facing. And it's why I wear the moose hide patch as much as I can, because violence against women in Canada is a problem, not only in the Aboriginal communities, but in Canada. And that's just one of the issues facing women in Canada. And Aboriginal women face even more because of the dismal social conditions they live under. Today, that all came back to me again because there was an advocacy group that I met with today that were talking about legalizing prostitution. And I hadn't read about this, I hadn't heard about it. I mean, I know it's okay in Europe and different countries on the road, but I never really seriously considered that for Canada. Because instead of fixing the problem of Aboriginal girls going into prostitution, and maybe our failures around it, maybe we can fix it by legalizing it. That's not a good fix. I mean, some of these young girls are 13, 14-year-old, I mean, out in the streets, getting abused and murdered and owned by pimps. That's not a right way to live. And so that's why I think that to start a solid family structure, we can give the breadwinners and then whoever else is in a household something else to look forward to and have a passion for. And so I grew up around this as well. I could see it happening in my own community. I could see it happening in my neighboring communities. And I know it's a deep, dark secret about all these issues that are happening on reserve. But if we don't talk about it, it's going to get worse, especially if Canada legalizes prostitution. These young girls that are facing all these social issues back at home, and they're thinking that they're going to somehow make it better by, believing the lies of these pimps with the jewelry and the cars and the parties. I mean, I told my girls back when they were getting teenagers, and I made it clear to them, you never come to Vancouver unless you have a plan, unless you're coming for school or a job. If you don't have those as a plan, you have no business in Vancouver, because you're going to end up in Hastings Street. And that only leads to death. It only leads to abuse. It leads to prostitution.
I will definitely be making available to you all at the end of the briefing today in the post-briefing notes the full clip of the comments from MLA Ellis Ross from British Columbia. His comments are so authentic and so heartfelt that I really believe that this individual, this gentleman, is going to be key for us to be liaising with on the road ahead. In fact, at the National Leadership Briefing, I've reached out to his office and asked if we could arrange a meeting and perhaps bring Ellis on to the next National Leadership Briefing or one in the future and discuss this further. In the meantime, I'd like to also make available to you all the contact information for his office. I'm sure he would love to know that you're willing to stand with him in defense of those members of his community that are most vulnerable. So thank you so much for letting me share Ellis with you. Now, I'd like to introduce you again to someone who we've had on the briefing before. Cathy Peters is a sex exploitation educator and trainer. You know her as the person with the facts. So let's bring Cathy on now and just get the latest from her. Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for joining us today. Such an important subject and such a good time to be talking about it. Cathy, you've been on the National Leadership Briefing before. You and I go way back, but for those of you who are new to the briefing, tell us what it is that you're working on right now with regards to the current circumstances of what's happening in Canada with human trafficking and prostitution.
Well, as usual, Doug, thanks so much for inviting me. First of all, here's my brand new pamphlet that's hot off the press, and it's Be Amazing to Stop Sexual Exploitation. That's what I'm trying to do. And this easy, simple pamphlet has the stats, numbers, and what I do and who I am. But I have just finished presenting to politicians, to city councils, regional districts, school boards, police boards, and law enforcement, 136 presentations in the last 4 months here in British Columbia, just to simply raise awareness about sexual exploitation. My focus is on child sex trafficking in BC, and who wants to have that going on in their province? We've got it happening in every province in Canada, but I am focused on BC. So that is what I've been doing currently. And typically I'm given 5 or 10 minutes to present. So I can do that very impactfully by giving the stats. And I always start with stats, and maybe you want me to jump in with that later.
Well, I actually, but remind me to get that brochure from you. If you don't mind sending an electronic copy to me, I'll make sure that it goes into the post-briefing notes today so that people can actually receive it at the end and actually read the stats themselves in print form. Also, it's going to have all your contact information on as well. So I always like connecting people up to you. Okay, so you are someone who's been working primarily in British Columbia, but you and I both know your material has been shared all across the nation, all across our country. We're having these challenges to varying degrees. But can you tell everybody here today who's watching from across the nation what is going on right now in Canada with regard to sexual exploitation and human trafficking? What do we need to know are the realities that are being faced by vulnerable persons that are living in our communities?
Well, first of all, it's happening in every community. You've got to all know that. This is not Thailand. This is not Cambodia. This is not Southeast Asia. It's happening in every community in Canada. And I love the RCMP. They've got a great poster that says, "I'm not for sale." We do currently have a federal law, and I don't want to lose this law. It's the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act. We've had this in place since 2014. There's 3 planks to it, and we also call it the equality model. But it targets the root cause: the sex buyer, the profiteer, the trafficker, the exploiter. They are criminalized. Number 2, the victim is immune from prosecution. And number 3, there's supposed to be exit strategies in place. The reason I always raise this law, because in BC, people don't even know about this federal law. We have it in place. We need this law consistently enforced across Canada, and we need a national rollout public awareness campaign so the public can report it. That's what is lacking in Canada. People don't even know about the issue and they don't know about reporting it. And I always put up this number. We do have a national number. I mean, this is really quite new. And here's your national hotline number that you can call from anywhere in Canada and get the help that you need. Any corner of Canada, there is help for you. The other thing is, a good place to go is to my website, the Be Amazing campaign. You can check that out, .org. But the reason that we've got the problem we do is because now we're part of a global community. We have unregulated technology, which is a huge problem. Social media is where children and youth are, and that's where they're getting lured and trafficked. We have very limited law enforcement. They're very behind the 8 ball. Organized crime, international crime syndicates are very involved with this, and there's almost no prevention education. So the piece that I do is prevention education. I've literally supplied a template for anybody to speak to this issue anywhere in Canada. And I would always say, start with your local government, start with your mayor and your city council. Grassroots is what I'm all about. You start from the bottom and work up. At some point, if grassroots start to get it, the politicians at your provincial level and the federal level have to listen to you.
Oh, fantastic. Now tell me about the vulnerability of the individuals. Now there are, I guess there's this feeling in the communities that I serve oftentimes that, well, this might be a problem, but it's not really a problem where I am, or I don't, it's not, this is like something that's happening in a far distant land. What are the actual statistics of what's going on and who's at risk, and who are they at risk of being preyed upon by who like who's doing the or who are the predators out there? Have you got some information you can share quickly with us today?
I can, certainly. The average age for being recruited in the sex industry now is 13 years of age in Canada. For the Indigenous, it's much younger. 54% are Indigenous. In urban centers, it's as high as 80 to 90% are Indigenous. So they are being really targeted. That is your worst case of systemic racism we have in the country. 82% have had childhood sexual abuse or incest. 72% live with, you got to get this, complex PTSD. This is the worst form of trauma a human being can live with. 95% in prostitution want to leave. It is not a choice. It is not work. It is not a job. You hear the term sex work. It is not work. They don't want to be there. And here's the new stat I've got. 84% of prostituted persons are trafficked. So organized crime and international crime syndicates are very involved. It's such a lucrative crime, but it's also a low risk crime. What everybody knows is that sex buyers are generally men, but what shocked me was 45% now of the traffickers are young women and girls, because they're being asked to recruit their girlfriends in high school. Our high schools have become recruiting grounds for gangs and for sex trafficking. And another shocking stat, 41% are trafficked by family members. But here's the number you need to know. We've had a record-breaking year, according to the National Center, this is from the US, of missing and exploited children, their cyber tip line, 22 million reports of suspected child sexual exploitation. Now, 22 million, that has gone through the roof. That is just exploded. And you can assume in Canada, the numbers are going to be 1 to 2 million. That is unacceptable in a modern, equal, civil society. We have to protect our youth, our children, our vulnerable, and the marginalized. And we're not doing a very good job of it. And I want to make sure we have a government in place that gets this. They've got to get this. Now, what can you do? You can learn about the issue. You share about this with your family and your immediate circle, and then you must alert. Please alert your city council, your mayor, your MLA, and your MP. Believe it or not, one person will make a difference. I'm just one person, and I'm making a difference.
You definitely are. And those the resources that you share on your website are outstanding. I'm going to make sure that everyone has access to that today. Well, thank you, Cathy, for joining us today. We're going to be talking now to some other solution providers, but I sure appreciate everything you're doing, and I look forward to staying in touch with you to keep us posted on your work.
Thanks so much, Doug.
God bless. Bye-bye. Well, that, of course, is Cathy Peters, and I really want to encourage everyone to look today for her information in the post-briefing notes. We have a beamazingcampaign.org website that she has that is just chock full of resources for you. And of course, we always want to make sure that we're giving you the information you need. So as she said the key here is to learn about the issue, and you've got all the information from her website, then share it with, she said family and friends, but you and I call it the sphere of influence, which we are a center of, and then alert the members of parliament, MLAs, the people around you of your concern and interest to see that vulnerable persons in your community are protected from sex exploitation and human trafficking. Okay, great. We're going to move on to the Citizen Spotlight segment now, and we're going to do something we've never done before. We're actually taking the Citizen Spotlight segment and we're doing the Citizens Spotlight segment and sharing it with two people. Now, the reason why we're doing that is that we know that to get things done at the government level, it takes communities and partnerships and people coming together. And so what has happened in Newmarket, Ontario, is that we have had a municipal government leader who has gotten together with others to pass a bylaw in their community regarding the regulation of body rub parlors and massage parlors. And this was done because she came into relationship with others, survivors and people that have experience and also experts in the field. So we're going to be welcoming now Grace Simon, who is a city councillor and a municipal government leader who has information to share, good news to share, and an offer to share with you now. Well, thank you so much, Grace, for taking the time to join us today for such an important issue. What you've accomplished in Newmarket, I think, is really exciting. I know that the people that we serve are going to think that it's really exciting as well. So thank you for coming and telling us this story.
Well, thank you, Doug, for inviting me to come and tell the story, because I'm pretty excited and very proud of what's taken place in Newmarket.
Oh, I'm so glad. Now, as you and I both know, we have the third pillar here on the National Leadership Briefing, and we look through that third pillar, and it is that the laws and policies of civil government at all levels, not just in the federal level or the provincial level, but at the municipal level, all of the policies must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable among us. And that's what this bylaw is that you have brought forward and had really passed at the local level in Newmarket. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of the conversation. Start at the beginning as to where this came from, this conversation about establishing a bylaw to protect people in the industry.
Yeah, well, just when I became a counselor, you become aware just that much more, right, about what's taking place in your community and what's happening around you. And I just began to really notice how we were just gaining so many more massage body rub parlor establishments. And I've always been very sensitive to it because being involved with helping to advocate against human trafficking, I'm very, very sensitive and aware to it. And, we started out with one body rub parlor, and then we rose to 12, 13 around town. And most people don't notice them. They don't pay attention to them. They don't even know that they're there. But when you know that they're there, you just can't ignore it. And so as I was seeing them coming more and more, our new bylaw director, who had come to Newmarket, he was from Vancouver, and I had a conversation, sat down with him one day, and I said, do you notice that Newmarket has a lot of body rub parlors? And he said, yeah. He says, actually, it was one of the first things that my fiance noticed when we came to town, was that Newmarket, for the size of town that we are, you guys have a lot of body rub massage parlors, body rub parlors. It was something that, really stuck out to her. And so it was just becoming like really, really obvious. And I'm like, this just can't be, because I know that it was just, they're very, very difficult to get into. They're very difficult to shut down. We had one come in, even the community that I'm a counselor for. Before I was a counselor, we had a body rub parlor in our community, in our residential community. And it rose just a huge stink. It really rose a lot of concern and uproar within the community, because it's not safe. There was men charging at girls that were coming to the variety store and fights outside of the store. And it became a very, very uncomfortable place all of a sudden in our community. So it was something that I knew as a counselor, if I could have anything to do with making a change in our community, just for that very thing, body rub parlors, then this was my opportunity to do that.
Well, fantastic. And I've actually read the bylaw over, and I have to say that the two things. One is that it's a very sensible approach for a municipal council to take when you start. If you look at the general regulations, and I'm going to include a copy of this in the post-briefing notes for everyone today, the copy of the bylaw, but it just talks about the owner-operator requiring a license, the attendants requiring a license, the owner-operator requiring to be present. It talks about the age of who you serve, about alcohol and drugs on the premises. I mean, this is signage. This is just a really straight up and down bylaw. It's not really onerous on people, although the licensing for the individuals who provide the services was a deviation from the norm. Is that where you hit most of your resistance?
Yes, exactly. And, like, I'm an advocate for small business. So when small businesses couldn't operate, I was out there doing videos and asking for the government to please open the doors for small businesses. And this whole thing, when we first presented the issue for needing a licensing for the massage parlors, the body rub parlors, it was, we really want to support reputable businesses, create safe places for people to work. Like that was our most important point to this procedure. That we want to make sure that people that are working in businesses in this town are safe and that the community is safe. And so this bylaw needed to be practical, that we are supporting reputable businesses that care for their patrons, care for their employees, that we feel really complement who Newmarket is as a town. And so that was the approach that we took when creating this bylaw. In fact, when it was first presented, if I can share, Doug, that because people aren't really aware, the first response from bylaw and even council, because they weren't aware, was that, oh, you can't turn down a business. You can't say that business can't operate. And I'm like, okay, well, we want to support reputable businesses, but we don't want to support those that are keeping the community unsafe, that are not reputable. And so,
right.
First presentation that came, it just wasn't going to be of any effect. It really was not going to make any changes. And so that's where we needed to call in people from the community that had a background of what it meant, what a body rub parlor really meant, to expose really, really what it meant to the community and these places being in our community. So we just has that approach.
So yeah, and this is what I understand about your story is that there really is an education component. You really have to bring people up to a level of understanding as to the link between body rub parlors and human trafficking, and that there are potentially victims inside of these body rub parlors that don't have freedom to actually do other things. And so to identify who these individuals are gives them a face and a name and a way of establishing connection with them to make sure that they aren't in fact human traffic victims. But you had to raise the level of understanding within council, as I understand it, on these issues. And so you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you actually, again, reached out, you were connecting with people who had experience that had been human trafficked into the body rub industry, and you brought them to council. Is that not true?
Exactly. I had to meet with counselors and the mayor, and have one-on-one sessions with them, group sessions, letting them know just how important this licensing bylaw really is and what it really means to work in a body rub parlor. So I have a couple of really good friends that are advocates, fighting and helping to rescue women out of the sex trade work. And they are so incredible, and they're from Newmarket. and they have organizations. One, really advocates at a federal level, and another one is an ex-RCMP officer who has an organization that helps to create homes for girls that have gotten out of the business, and creating safe place for them just to recover and to get back their feet back on the ground. And they're both from Newmarket. And then there was a few other advocates. Newmarket is a hub for people fighting against human trafficking. So it was just a really amazing opportunity. But council and Bylaw learned so much. Bylaw said, after doing so many interviews, they just, in digging deeper, their eyes were really open to what it was that they were dealing with. And what it did for them was just really fuel the importance of what it meant to put real teeth into this licensing bylaw, so that, it was you're not forcing the wrong people. You're not forcing people to close their doors just because we don't want something. It's just, we really, really raise the bar to understand that we're supporting legitimate businesses.
That's right.
Really want that in our town. And if you're not legitimate and you're not doing what the federal government is allowing, then we don't want you here. And so
fantastic. And you are providing for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable among us. And that's really why you're here on the National Leadership Briefing. We're so appreciative of what you've accomplished, but even more so, I have to say to everybody today, you have agreed to share a one-pager information sheet with your contact information for anyone who is called to their city, who feels this on their heart, that they can work with city council, or perhaps they're counselors themselves or want to be counselors, to advance bylaws like this in their own cities. And because you've walked that road already, you've told me that you're willing to work with anyone across our nation who'd like to duplicate this in their city. Is that right?
Absolutely. I want to be a part of this. I want to help you.
Thank you, Grace. And this is wonderful. I'm so glad. I'd like to think that this is the beginning of the relationship that we're going to have here with the National Leadership Briefing, that we're going to have you back, and we're going to bring people on that you've talked to, that you've helped out, and tell more success stories about things like this that are out there protecting people, like bylaws that actually provide for safety and security of people. Fantastic. Thank you, Grace, for your time today. Appreciate you coming by.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Now, as Grace mentioned, she didn't do it alone. She had that bylaw passed because she had the help of professional people and survivors. And one of the individuals who was key in helping to get this particular bylaw passed in Newmarket was Casandra Diamond, who now has an organization called BridgeNorth. Now, when I first heard about Casandra, I had an opportunity to view a video that she had placed, a TEDx video that she'd placed online. And I'm going to share just a clip of it with you today because we weren't able to get Casandra. Casandra is very busy as an activist in helping to confront human trafficking in our nation. And I hope to have her on the National Leadership Briefing in the future. However, I wanted to honor her today and give her voice as a survivor a place on the National Leadership Briefing so that you could come to know her and come to know her work. I'm going to include BridgeNorth's information in the post-briefing notes as well today. And I want you to begin the road of getting to know who she is, because her story is like so many in Canada, the voiceless, the people we don't hear about. And I just really want to give that voice a place here today. So please let me introduce you now to Casandra Diamond as she shares a little bit about her story.
My story isn't an easy one to tell. In fact, every time I tell my story, I'm re-traumatized. But if sharing my story means that one more girl has a chance at freedom, then it's worth it for me. Growing up in my family wasn't easy. Mental health problems and abuse can destabilize a family. But abuse doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It doesn't just start or stop in one individual's life. It permeates every action and activity of their being. Mental health problems and abuse led to neglect. And neglect left me on the streets of Scarborough, a very young girl. I distinctly recall going back to school. Remember, each year, the teacher would ask us, write down what you did that summer. I was so ashamed. I was paralyzed. I didn't go to summer camp. No, I didn't go to the cottage. I was the kid that played outside all day long. There was no regular structure. There was no routine for most anything. One summer, I was raped by a stranger. Another, abused and degraded by the neighborhood boys. I was always in fight or flight mode. It seemed like danger was lurking around every corner. What I learned that summer was how to remain hypervigilant, how to avoid attack, something that no young girl should ever have to learn. But it didn't stop with the neighborhood boys. I would later be abused at the hands of a multi-generational pedophile, and it was his words that kept me trapped. When he said, "Your parents won't love you anymore if you tell on me." In my isolated environment, I believed him. And my behaviors started to reflect the environment that I lived in. I don't remember a time back then when my body ever felt like my own. At 17, I started moving from club to club. I first started stripping. Then, later, I worked for a smut magazine where I would meet some of the most dangerous people I've ever encountered. Still, I was on this never-ending quest to have some form of agency over my own body, a source of power I had never had before. One day, my phone rang. I was looking at my gas gauge, sitting on empty. It was my old coworker from the magazine company. He called me to tell me he was running Toronto's largest massage parlor, and he wanted me to come and join his stable. The word stable didn't even give me pause. Well, on the outside, it looked like a normal business, except it wasn't. This massage parlor had 10 rooms, and they were always busy. There were between 40 to 60 women and girls on rotation in this spa. A massage was between $40 and $50. We'd get a $10 commission if you didn't have a fine. And you could have a fine for just about anything. Being late, talking back, or not having a perfectly primed body. It was expected that the girls could earn considerably more money by doing extras. And by doing extras, I am talking about some of the most unimaginable and degrading acts. Police raids, they occurred in these places. But no police officer, no bylaw official ever offered me help. No one ever said, "Hey, is there somewhere else you'd rather be? Or I know somebody you can call. Can I connect you to?" And this would be my life for the next nearly 9 years. Maybe you're listening to my story and you're thinking, how foolish is this girl? But I wasn't foolish. I was vulnerable, I was naive, and I was a perfect target. I didn't have a sense of belonging. I didn't feel wanted or valued for anything other than my body. I had started to deceive myself. This is my choice. I'm making this money. But in hindsight, there wasn't much choice involved at all. This wasn't work, it was trafficking. I was told how to dress, who to have sex with, where to live, everything. I felt scared almost all the time. The man who recruited me, he manipulated me into thinking and believing that he was my protector, my boyfriend. Except he wasn't. He was my trafficker, and I was little more than his property. Over time, He made me a manager. Made me. This was not an act of saving me. This was not a promotion. This was him trying to build his status and grow his power. On paper, he ran a licensed body rub parlor. This allowed him to look like a legitimate businessman. This license allows you to rub, knead, or stimulate any muscle in the human body. Officially, these words don't mean that sex is on the menu. But in my experience, and that of thousands of others, suggests differently. Somewhere between the letter of the law, the predatory practices of massage parlor owners and operators, the willingness for police to look the other way, our city has created the licensed brothel system.
Casandra Diamond of BridgeNorth and Grace Simon, municipal government leader in Newmarket, two of our Citizen Spotlight segments for today. I was very excited to have the opportunity to share them both with you today because they have done a great work in passing this bylaw in Newmarket. And I have to say, the last thing Casandra Diamond said was in the clip that I shared, and by the way, I'm going to share the entire clip in the post-briefing notes. That was just a segment from her testimony, that TEDx talk that she did. But I'm going to share the whole thing with you. But the last thing that she said in the part that we did share was that her city had established a licensed brothel system. And I have to ask you, has your city done that? Has your municipal government, in essence, accidentally perhaps, established a licensed brothel system? Do they need to become aware of the same things that Grace became aware of in Newmarket? And Grace, with this offer to help you to bring that information to their attention, is that something that you'll respond to? I sure hope it is, because in cities all across Canada, what they have accomplished in Newmarket can be duplicated. And it just takes people coming forward and saying, I will be the person. I will participate in bringing this information forward. If you are a city councilor, get in touch with Grace. I'm going to provide her information in the post-briefing notes. If you are someone who wants to speak to city councilors, contact Grace and she wants to help. So I thank you so much for your attention to that segment today, because I think that's really important. This could be very key on the municipal government level to start here and to bring this attention of sex exploitation and human trafficking to the attention of our municipal government leaders. Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you so much, Casandra, for doing that. We sure appreciate it. I look forward to having Casandra on the National Leadership Briefing in person. She's really busy right now. We talked and just wasn't able to get on personally this time, but I'm sure at some point in the future, we will have her with us, and I'd be happy to introduce her at that time as well. So now let's move on to the federal level of government, because there's a member of parliament right now that sent me something I want to share with you, and but I'm going to let him tell you all about it. So let's bring on our guest member of parliament today. Well, thank you so much, MP Arnold Viersen from Peace River Westlock. We sure appreciate you taking the time to come and see us today.
Oh, Doug, it's always a pleasure.
Yes, and we're actually connecting during the summer with you. You know, we know you're busy in the constituency talking to your constituents, but thank you for sharing yourself with the nation once again, because I came across something in my inbox a little while ago that I knew needed to be shared with everyone across the country who has an interest in being kept up to date on anti-exploitation initiatives across Canada. You sent me this email. MP Viersen sent me this email, and this is a one-stop shop of every parliamentary effort that is going on right now to combat exploitation. Can you tell me a little bit about this email and where it came from and what it's all about?
Yeah, so it comes about, I'm part of an all-party group actually for combating exploitation and human trafficking. And we kind of do a summary of the year essentially and send that out to all the members of the group. And then we say, hey, we should actually probably just send it out to everybody. And so we send it to everybody that's kind of contacted my office, wondering what's going on the anti-trafficking, anti-sexual exploitation, anti-pornography area. And so that's where most of these initiatives that we're outlining, these are just the work that we do. I have my staff put together a list of that, and we send it out across the country letting everybody know what's going on in Parliament.
Well, I tell you, I work around these things all the time. I work around guys like you all the time, but I was pretty impressed with the extensive list that was here. I mean, everything, the bill's Modern Slavery Act, Protecting Young Persons and Exposure to Pornography Act. Again, all of these Stopping Internet Exploitation, Sexual Exploitation Act. All of these are legislative proposals. But what you've done is you put this into a easy to grab a hold of and review and archive and use as resource format, along with all sorts of other things. Like are there survivors videos and everything from testimonies and committees? I mean, it's all here.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, Doug, and thanks for it's a compliment. That's what we try to do is make it interactive. So there's many links. So we've also put in there a bunch of the committee reports that we've been working on. I've sat on both the Ethics Committee and the Northern Aboriginal Affairs Committee, where we've looked into Pornhub at the Ethics Committee, and then trafficking and how that affects the Indigenous people in Canada. And so you can watch some of the video. We put links in so that you can watch some of the video of the testimony that's happened at those committees. And then also you can read those reports if you're interested in that as well. And so that this is fairly long, and you mentioned the fact that there seems to be a lot of things going on. I have to admit the New York Times article called "The Children of Pornhub" that really has moved the ground on all of these issues, and it's made it much easier to get some of these policy initiatives going forward. And so the list is long, and that's exciting, and that's in due part to all the work that we've done over the last few years to try to push these issues to the forefront. But it is kind of their time in the sunshine right now, no doubt.
Absolutely, the need is great, most definitely. Well, we have a community here on the National Leadership Briefing that would love to get on that list. So, how do people receive not only your annual but the ongoing updates that you can provide on parliamentary efforts to combat exploitation? What do they have to do to get on that list?
Yeah, so we try to send out an email once a month. It isn't like a regular scheduled thing, so sometimes you get it twice a month, and sometimes you don't get it for 2 months. But if you email my office, there's a guy named Joel there that he kind of tabulates that. So we can put his email address in the link later on, and if you email him and just say, hey, I'd like to be added to the anti-exploitation or the anti-pornography list, he'll add you, and you'll start getting those reports kind of once a month kind of thing.
Fantastic. Well, what I'll commit to do here now is for everyone that's on the briefing today, or if you're watching this as part of a post-briefing note video, I'm going to include MP Arnold Viersen's update that I received in the post-briefing notes today, along with a direct link, as MP Viersen had pointed out, to his executive assistant. If you put add me to the anti-exploitation list in the subject line, you will receive these parliamentary updates on a regular basis, and you will be kept up to speed on what it is that not only our parliamentarians are doing, but they'll also be providing you, I'm sure, with ways that you can express your support and exercise your influence as a citizen to show your support for these initiatives. Is that fair to say, Arnold?
100%. 100%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we don't get into like too much of the political side of it, but there's always help there as well. I know that at the Conservative Party convention and policy rallies that we've had, pushing the anti-pornography stuff through the party process, I've always needed more bodies in the room to get that done. So look forward to having some of your people show up to support that as well.
Always willing to do what we can do to help. Thanks so much, MP Viersen, for your time today. Appreciate it, and look forward to working with you on the road ahead.
Anytime, Doug. It's always a pleasure.
Take care. Member of Parliament Arnold Viersen from Peace River, Westlock. So we will make sure, again, that's in the post-briefing notes for you today. Get on that list. It's like receiving a gift in the mail. It's all wrapped up and tidy, and there's active links, and you just click on them and you're away. You've got all that at your fingertips. Hope that's helpful. Now, moving on, want to come down the home stretch now and bring in someone who, you know me, I love it when people get something on their heart and they have a feeling like they just want to act. Well, I ran into somebody like that, and they contacted the National Leadership Briefing a while ago, and we got started on an initiative called the BreakFree Collective. Now, let me now introduce you to Joe Adam George, who is the person who had that on their heart and got in touch with me, and things are rolling along. Well, thank you, Joe, for taking the time to join us here today. We are on the home stretch here on the National Leadership Briefing, and I wanted to save our conversation for the end because something that has been on your heart that you've shared with me and that we've talked about in the past is really the heart of unity, coming together. Obviously, these are very big issues that we're dealing with here in Canada today. We all want to stand in defense of vulnerable persons that live among us in our communities, and you've got a really big heart for that as well. First off, Joe, before we get into, just tell us about where did you come from, and tell me what it is that is on your heart right now when it comes to human trafficking in Canada and the work that you do.
Certainly, Doug. And first off, thank you so much for this opportunity to be on your show. I've never ever anticipated to be interviewed by you. This is an amazing opportunity, and considering that this is the first time I'm doing an interview for the BreakFree Collective, and it's your platform that I'm doing it on, I think that's an absolute privilege for me. And thank you, Doug. Really appreciate it. So yes, just a little bit about myself. I am originally from India, but I was born and raised in the Middle East. I consider myself as a global nomad, though, because besides having lived in the Middle East, I was educated and then in the UK and then worked there for a while, briefly worked in the US before I decided to make Toronto my home. And I've been here in the city for about 4 years now. I've loved my time here in Canada, a great country. To see the heart of people, with a passion for human rights, not just for Canadians, but also to help and bless people across the globe with the resources is absolutely remarkable. And that's something that, Canadians are well known for. And that's essentially where I find myself, or rather, find myself doing what I'm doing today. When I came to this country, I came fully knowing what sex trafficking was, but I never quite expected to see that Canada would be a place where I would find sex trafficking, exist, and in the manner that it does today. I've seen sex trafficking in its various forms in the Middle East, in India, in the UK as well. And but never quite expected it to find it here in Canada of all the places, and which is one of the reasons why I thought, it motivated me to do what I'm doing today.
You've done an amazing job so far, because I've been walking this road with you. Obviously, I'm an active participant in the project, the BreakFree Collective that you mentioned there. But it's just amazing how much you've accomplished, Joe. You've brought so many people together who have this common desire, this shared heart for human trafficked persons in our communities. Tell us about your work with the BreakFree Collective so far and what your vision is for the road ahead.
Certainly, Doug. So the objective of BreakFree Collective is, like I stated before, I believe that we can accomplish far greater things if we unite and collaborate together. Because I've seen that the other side, which is the pro-prostitution lobby, we are so, well connected. And there's absolute harmony, despite the fact that they are up to no good and they're out there to destroy the lives of vulnerable women and children and our society in general. They are so, they are so well, cemented in their efforts to do it, and they, collaborate and unite so well. And I think it's these are some of the lessons that we can learn from them, because what we are set out to do is to help those who are, affected by crime, by abuse, by the lack of financial resources, which contribute into the larger problem of trafficking and sexual exploitation. So I believe that BreakFree Collective, our objective has always been to bring together people who are like-minded and who have a heart and passion to fight these problems and to help vulnerable Canadians. And our primary objectives, and me being a media and communications professional, I believe that it is important for us to get our story right, to make sure that we are the voice of reason for those Canadians who don't have a voice, whose voices have been suppressed so far by the forces out there. I believe that it is our responsibility to give these people, and which is why we have so many survivors on board with us who are our primary spokespeople. And it's also important that we talk to the corporate sector. I don't think as a movement, the anti-trafficking organizations have done enough to bring the corporate world onto our side, because as you know, most of this, a vast majority of sex buyers are employed in the corporate sector, and it is important for us to bring the corporate world on our side.
Well, and you are doing it. It's happening right now. I've been on the calls. You're bringing people together. They're responding. They're hearing your heart. They're coming on board. They're wanting to contribute, and this is really moving quickly. And I'm excited to see where it's going, because I think that there's a pace of change that's occurring out there on the like the pro prostitution front, for example. They're really getting aggressive and they're moving quickly. And our response and our, I guess, strategy needs to deploy quickly, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, we got some excellent legislation in place. Certainly, it needs to be enforced better. And I think there's definitely scope for more stronger legislation to be put in place as well, which, I know that the likes of MP Arnold Viersen and many other MPs and senators are working towards. I believe the onus is on us as a movement to make sure that the sanctity of such legislations are intact. And in fact, we only work towards reinforcing them so that, not just us, but the generations ahead are protected.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Joe, for the work that you're doing there. And the BreakFree Collective, I just want to put this out in for everyone today, is what you're going to be providing, Joe, is you're going to be providing us with a one-page summary that I'm going to be able to include in the post-briefing notes today. That's going to not only provide information about you and where you're at right now and the BreakFree Collective and what the goals and objectives are, but you're also going to, and I asked you about this before, you're also going to provide information on what monies would be used for by individuals who have this on their heart to support the work of the BreakFree Collective in the future. So I thank you for providing that information, because as you mentioned, they are well funded. The people who oppose our worldview on these issues oftentimes are very well organized and very well funded. And we want to put some grease on the wheel and some finances behind this. So I encourage everybody here to look for that one pager that Joe's going to provide for us as to what the funds that you contribute are going to be used for if you support the work of the BreakFree Collective. And you can do that. Is that all good, Joe? Did I get that right, that we're going to provide that today?
Absolutely, Doug. I can do
Excellent.
that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I just wouldn't want all this to just be for naught today, because this is part of a much longer story that we're going to be telling. We're going to be staying on this issue, and ultimately, let's all work together. And how about this? Let's end human trafficking here in Canada. How about that?
Absolutely. I strongly, it's not just about human trafficking alone, Doug, because you
Yes.
know that where there's human trafficking, there's an ecosystem of drugs, of other criminal activities as well. So if we stop one thing, I'm sure it's going to have a ripple effect on others as well. So
absolutely.
That's what
Making
we
for a
need
much
to.
better Canada.
Absolutely, Doug. And thank you for everything that you're doing through your show.
No, happy to do it. Thank you for your time today. Have a wonderful day, Joe. Again, that was Joe Adam George of the BreakFree Collective, and you will find the information in the post-briefing notes today for not only Joe, but everyone that we have had shared with you today. I thank you so much for your attention for the 1 hour. This is an important hour once a month that we spend together. The brief moments in time that we have for the midweek touch points are also very valuable to me. And I appreciate so much that you have lent your voice to this group, that we can look for these opportunities and threats on the horizon and speak with a unified voice for the things that we believe in, the things that we share in common, the principles that undergird the 4 pillars. I look forward to seeing you again on the next week, midweek touch point. And I look forward to continuing this work. I mentioned in the beginning of this briefing, I said very seriously, what is happening today on this particular issue is just the beginning. We will maintain a focus on sexual exploitation, on anti-human trafficking initiatives, and I will continue to keep you informed. And I look forward to hearing your success stories out there of what you've done locally within your sphere of influence. Until next time, though, I thank you so much. But until next time, God bless you, God bless your family, and may God continue to bless this great nation of Canada. Bye for now.
It's time to wake up from our slumber
and stand together, united as one. One family, one body, one church.
We will not walk past the vulnerable.
Say nothing, do nothing, and turn a blind eye.
We are citizens of a great nation.
We are good Samaritans to our neighbors. You are not alone.
We are the largest unified voice in Canada. So we stand united. This is our rally cry. We are Christ to our nation. This is our battle cry. He shall have dominion from sea to sea and from the river unto the ends of the earth. Righteousness will reign. Justice will prevail. We are united.